I've seen it happen on the freeway. The person pulls into your lane, and they broke a rule in your universe, and when that rule gets broken, it's permission. They failed, it's permission to punish. Oh, sweet punishment. For 3 miles. You know, those psychic bombs are just, you know, you go to war. So what I'm getting at is, I'm not taking this into the social realm that we're all conscious of, but I'm looking at these mechanics, and I'm really kind of, for myself, and of course this is something you look at for yourself. But I was taught to bully. I was taught to bully, and it's taking me the better part of 67 years to figure it out and to learn there's another way to manage a communication. The notion of a perfect picture has been the answer to me. Perfect picture is the language I use. The language on the street out here on the parking lot would be, you have a button. And if you're a parent, hey, you can't do that. Pow. You're just doing what a kid does or whatever. You made a little mess, cool. You can't, pow. That becomes a button in you. All right? It has an emotion in it. Let's say a 3-year-old emotional charge. This is where this gets fun. I'm an adult now. I'm 67 years old. But someone makes that same mess. And it stimulates that 3-year-old memory. And I become my father in that memory and treat that person the same way I was treated. Hey, you can't do. You see what I'm getting at? That energy comes right out, and I become that event, that 3-year-old event. This notion of a button, this notion of a perfect picture, is an emotionally charged consideration that has a pain in it. And what I do with that pain is I put right in front of it, essentially it becomes a rule for me. Don't make the mess. Because if you make the mess, this will happen. See the consequence. So the perfect picture, in a sense, becomes my protection at that age. Oh, you can't do that. And as a result, anyone who makes the mess, they break my rule. They push my button. So here I am in the grocery line. That person somehow is breaking my rule. It can even be undefined. It's just an emotionally charged memory that doesn't even have to be coherent. But it lights me up. The foot starts to tap. I'm in judgment. I start to shuffle. I'm in failure. And I either have to swallow that energy or throw it at them. And that's what we call throwing energy. And in that moment, I become the bully. For you clairvoyant students, understand that this is why it's a 12-month program, and this is why you do readings. You're learning to sit there and allow that person to light you up and process that without going after them. It doesn't happen necessarily overnight. It's all relative to the charge in the memory. Because we lose our space, then we find it. So there's not a state of perfection of where I never lose my space. Ha. I like to say to people, they come in and with some of the staff, Betsy and back, Elizabeth and Arena and some of their others, and they'll have the picture, oh, you never lose your space. Well, really, the difference between the staff and, if you will, someone's not familiar with the techniques is we lose our space probably as much, if not more, but ideally we can find it as quickly as we lost it. We don't sit in it for 3 miles down the freeway. Does that make sense? Or for 2 or 3 years. So let's take this back, this mechanical consideration, and that to me is what it is. It's the mechanics of energy. And until you start to recognize that there's a space here and start to own that space and, if you will, have it for your, no, I'm going to say own it, and make that part of your interaction with people, then you're constantly losing it. But really kind of to spin off your question, how do you start to get a handle on this? And really, to me, it's to the degree that I feel intimidated. And I have to say, you know, not to beat a drum on it, but, and I don't think this is unusual, but to speak personally, I know what being intimidated is. I have experienced that, even as an adult as much as a child, of being intimidated. In the moment of interacting with someone, walking down the street, anticipating a phone call, I've been intimidated. And what has brought me back around to is start to look at that intimidation and why am I so intimidated or sensitive to that? And here's my answer. How do I dismantle that to where I can walk down the street and feel comfortable with myself in the midst of whatever the environment is? It's space, but it's also what keeps me, what reinforces me having my space is me starting to watch the other end of that dichotomy when I intimidate someone else. Because if I'm intimidating you, it opens the door for me to be intimidated. It's a two-way street. You can't have it one way. You've got to look at it, and if you really want power in this game, you start to look at when you start to intimidate or throw energy. Judgment, failure, punishment, and you start to challenge yourself in that moment. As you challenge yourself in that moment, I start to become amused with that person in that line in the grocery store, and all of a sudden when this person over here starts to intimidate me, I'm as amused with this as I was with this. You with me? It's a two-way street.